My name is Tibor Spitz. I live in Kingston, New York, in the United States.
And tell me all the places you have lived in your life.
I started in a small, we call it town because it was a county seat, Dolny Kubin, in very north, almost at the Polish border of Slovakia. The country was called Czechoslovakia. I was born in 1929, and I had an older brother and younger sister. I was raised in that small town of 2,000 people, went to elementary school with other kids, and with other kids which were not Jewish, because there were not enough Jews there to make a cheder with a Jewish school. My father was a cantor, a chazan with all rabbinical duties, and my mother was a teacher. And she received her diploma in an Ursuline monastery, Catholic monastery, because it was the only institution in Austrian-Hungarian monarchy before Czechoslovakia was created, which had a license to teach, to educate teachers. Later on it was changed.
And tell me the other places you have lived in your life after this village.
After it, I went to, then we survived the Holocaust. Most important was a forest, 200 days, 7 months in a forest under snow and ice. We didn't know how long it would take. We dug a hole, built a shelter, spent a very long time there, survived somehow against all odds, and moved to another town called Liptovsky Mikuláš. After finishing high school, I went to Prague. I had to go to study chemistry, and a few years later, after completing that education, I moved to Sudetenland, where I completed my education, received a PhD by experimenting in glass industry. I was the first one in the country who made his PhD in industrial relationships, and not only in the lab or some kind of a university or research environment. Then I worked in glass industry as a researcher, scientist, inventor. I had a lot of patents, a lot of publications. I gave paper on International Glass Congress. It was a communist country, which means that they sent me there with 2 bodyguards, which were not guarding me from the outside dangers, but they guarded me from escaping, so that they brought me safely back to Czechoslovakia. And I was representing great Soviet or simply regime science. I knew that the regime would end one day, and I believed that I'm doing something good, because glass was very useful for for consumers, flat glass particularly, and hollow glass, we called it, bottles and tumblers and any glass, fibers, whatever. And I was a very good specialist in glass industry, manufacturing as well as science, because I knew that I would have to escape one day. And I kept my left hand in science and right hand in industry. I could be useful in both sides of that field, which are not too many fields which you can embrace totally from one side to the other one. After completing 20 years later, they sent me to Cuba after spending a lot of times abroad, but only exclusively in East European countries, where I was troubleshooting mostly glass factories or exchanging scientific discoveries with Soviet scientists in Moscow and in glass factories abroad, in their country, including the areas where now the fighting goes on. I spent a few days in Kharkiv and Kiev and so on. After being sent to Cuba and fixing their glass industry, which I was asked to do, the assignment, in the middle of the assignment, I had to return to Czechoslovakia to report to my bosses, and I found out that the country is occupied by 500,000 Soviet soldiers, which came to teach our government how to really handle a proper political system, which drifted into something called communism with a human face, and it was no such thing, and it had to be corrected. And it was corrected. I didn't like it, and by flying back to Cuba, the airplane refueled in Canada, and we escaped to Canada. 3 months later, after learning the language, because the Canadians have 2 official languages, English and French, I got a job in Montreal, spending 2 years in Montreal. Then we moved to Toronto, where the company I worked for built a glass factory, bottles, making bottles, containers. Then I returned. They sent me back to Montreal, where it was the largest factory, where I was able to increase production without any investment, just by speeding up glass melting. When French people took over the government and started threatening English people, which happened to me, I was not English, but it was an incident associated with a nationality. I became very uncomfortable, and we moved to Philadelphia, West Virginia, New Jersey, and finally ended up in Kingston, which was not anymore glass manufacturing. After 30 years, I spent 14 years developing magnetic recording heads, which were a basic instrument or component of hard drives, which didn't exist until then. Which means that I very often, when I give detailed lectures, apologizing to people that staring, that when their children or grandchildren are staring at some monitors, I feel very guilty because I contributed a lot to that unfortunate or fortunate, whatever view you have. But it has improved, it has changed the whole outlook of humankind, and it was as important as inventing steam engine or electricity, and before metals, so that I felt really that I came here following a advice: you have to leave this world better than you left. When you have to leave this world a better place than when you arrived, when you were born. And this I felt I fulfilled to a great extent. And this was my work. And after retiring at the age of 68, which was 24 years ago, I became a full-time artist. I was already painting, exhibiting. I even made it in a book of an art historian from Rutgers University. His book was marketed using my paintings, of 44 paintings, and this is how I found out that he used my painting and my biography, comparing me with all kinds of giant giants of like Siegel, giants of American art, and that book eventually was published in 1997 when I was much younger. There were other books where my art appeared. There were many published articles, magazines, and clips, movies. And when I became a professional artist at the age of 68 and so on, then that my art appeared in really many trailers, films, and books. And it was in 2015, Canadian Slovaks sent a team from Toronto to make a movie about my life. It's a documentary movie, 42 minutes long, available online on YouTube under the title of SPITZ space DVD space 01, and many other ones. If somebody is interested to go online and search Tibor Spitz, finds many clips and many trailers. I was 12 years old. I was 10 years old when I was kicked out of school because what they called a race. But it was no such thing as a race. Nobody could distinguish us on the streets because we were dressed the same way, we spoke the same way, we looked the same way. And it was practically religion. It was an artificial reason how to find the way to rob us, and eventually it became an armed robbery because killing us was also involved. They killed even babies, little children, so that they could not claim the property later on, which means that it was an armed robbery under the title of race, which was not a race because they picked up an ethnic group or a religious group. When I was 12, they did it this way. They told us, prepare yourself, carry only a little bag in your hand, what you can carry, and report to a railroad, and we will take you to a labor camp somewhere abroad, and we will let you have your own government and your own management, and who can work will work and feed older people, children and female and so on. Which means that it was a president of the Slovak fascist republic at that time was a Catholic priest. Nobody would believe that a Catholic priest would send to death a whole entire family, children, babies, females, old people, which means that people somehow trusted that they would end up in some kind of a labor camp. And we were told after the war we will decide what to do with you, but first of all we have to win the war. And most people obeyed. Before that, before 1942, before the deportations, they were telling us Jews cannot wear fur coats. We had to, whatever was fur, and we lived in very high mountains, very cold, we were not allowed to keep warm. Which means that we had to bring to police station anything with fur. Then musical instruments and radios and anything associated with writing. Then naturally money and property was confiscated first. Jewelry, we had to bring all the jewelry to the police station. And after being totally robbed, then came and we started starving and being very upset and hungry and cold. Then they told us a solution is to bring you to your own labor camp and you will live there happily ever after. Naturally, it turned out to be that people who arrived to those so-called labor camps where few people were selected out to become laborers, but the rest, majority, more than 90%, were asked to undress and to be disinfected after a long trip, and instead of showers, poisonous gas killed them, and prisoners burned their bodies in a huge battery of Siemens-built crematoria. And in 2 hours, 1,000 to 2,000 people could be turned into ashes. And people only figured it out in the last 15-20 minutes that it's their last moment of life. It was very well thought out. A lot of German psychologists made PhDs by working out the system of deceiving people, of making rules which would end up by people saying, oh, I can live without musical instrument, I can live without books, I can live without this and that. And it was thought out to a way that deceived people really walked into those cattle cars expecting to end up in a labor camp, and including the uncertainty. They didn't know the locations, they didn't know the destination, but still it was some kind of a normal way. We were not deported immediately because there were 24 kids in that little town. When they kicked us out of schools, public schools, they asked the Jewish community, you have to produce your own school. And my mother became a school teacher in that school. There were 24 children in that small town, 2,000 people, and about 270 Jews. Then another reason why we were set aside was that my mother and my father was a Jewish reverend, Jewish cantor, in charge of burials, which means that if a Jew died, nobody else would bury him, which means that they kept a clergyman, Jewish clergyman, in charge of burying, and told us, you will be the last one. You will move you after the Jews will not live here anymore. You will, at the end of the year, you would be the last one to be deported. And this gave us some time, but this was also a broken promise, and because we found out, and I have a book published that day, and I have even the document available showing that we were on the list to be deported several times in between, regardless of the promises they gave us. But when we saw cattle cars on the railroad station and we saw no cattle, we assumed that it's made for people. We always escaped. We hid for a few days, and they never found us at home. And this way we saved ourselves from being shipped into the death camp. And when really our turn came to be shipped, but it happened later when, after a little uprising, Slovak national uprising, the name of it, was crushed by German army, and German army took over Slovakia. We knew that any compromise or zigzagging or simply hiding would not work anymore, and we built a shelter in the forest, believing that the front line would move very quickly because the Soviet army, at that time it was called the Red Army, was already in Poland and Ukraine, and we believed that they might, they were about 100, 150 miles away, or kilometers even less distance. And they stopped there and prepared themselves, rearmed and so on. And we had to survive 200 days, 7 months under snow and ice in a forest covered with snow and ice, very high in the mountains, which was much colder and longer. In April 4, the whole Slovakia was already surrounded by Soviet army, and German army ran away. And same, my wife Noemi, she was 22 months old, hiding, was liberated the same day as we were liberated in northern Slovakia, but not before. In the forest where we were hiding, there were 5 battles fought between the Red Army soldiers and German army and their all kinds of collaborators, Romanians, Hungarians, whatever. And we had, when we came out of that shelter, it was, we saw craters, like a few yards wide, made of cannon shells by cannon explosions and cartridges all over. And if they fell on our shelter, we would have been gone. Or if we appeared alive, either army would have shot us because they were. Which means that to survive those 200 days needed a real miracle, because there were thousands of opportunities for us to be killed. And since those deportations, if I included into it, there were about 3 years we had to survive somehow, hiding, zigzagging, pretending, and then hiding under the ground, living like forest animals live, but they were very better prepared than us. And we made it alive because we were also robbed in that forest, lined up to be shot, and made it somehow miraculously. I escaped, and came back to bury them, and they were alive, standing in underwear in snow in February, and we had to survive two more months, which means that unimaginable starvation, suffering, conditions, mental anguish, and we made it alive. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
We cut out of the side of a hill, like a triangle, put 4, like we found tree trunks, like falling trees, put some stones on the bottom. Crisscrossed it, and then build a structure with a hole in the middle, and left an opening to walk in and out. And it looked, this is a little bit better way of showing it. This yellow part was cut out of the hillside, and it was the opposite hillside, and a little bit of tiny stream of water was in between those two slopes in the valley. And then these were those beams. We didn't have any nails or ropes or anything, which means that we just cut it. I had a little hatchet. Here it is showing our tools. Little hatchet, our bare hands, and a soldier running away left his trench shovel behind, and I picked it up. And this is how then the shelter looked, better shown here. This was like a top. Here was a wooden structure. This was a roof, a hollow stump through which we were breathing, and in and out, we can crawl in and out. It was just on all four from the shelter, and 6 people were inside. And a patrols, SS men and local soldiers, and some naturally people who would love to benefit from taking us dead or alive to the Gestapo, were searching for us as well. And they were local partisans, and they didn't like us either. Eventually, the group of parachuted partisans into this area from Soviet Union. My mother was very psychic, and she had dreams, and she had dreams sometimes, you know, like her parents were standing in front of the shelter, moving their hands like that, you know, pushing something away. And she was whispering us in the morning, you know, strange dreams she had. And when we looked out, when dark night came, and we looked to the snow, we saw really horseshoes on the snow, a few yards from our shelter. And it could have been, if they continued a few yards, they would reach our shelter, and it might have caved in under the weight of a horse, or with a rider on it, armed. Which means that, you know, what about food? First months, even maybe 2, we had a bag of flour, half a bag of flour, and potatoes. We ate them raw because we couldn't make fire. Fire in the forest would betray us, would show the smoke, and it would be revealing our location. Which means that this is what was a way of survival. Before the snow fell in October, I could collect mushrooms. We knew which were edible. I was born there, and I knew all those things. Berries on bushes. I knew which were poisonous, which were not. And there are many leaves and vegetation in the forest which is edible. And we knew that, and it was much easier. When the snow fell, then I had to go and dig under the snow for those mushrooms and collect those berries on bushes which were sticking out of the snow. Snow was 1 to 2 feet tall, and the bushes were taller than that. And we, that night when we really needed help, the area had a lot of spas with mineral water, warm mineral water, smelling like rotten eggs, like sulfur, hydrosulfide, which is in those in those healing waters, and it really disturbs the ground, and that water erupted. A tiny stream erupted on the bottom of our shelter and was flowing into that little stream, 1 foot, 2 feet, depending on how much rain or snow melting was flowing into the stream. And this was a way that saved us, because not only heating the area, but also produce some kind of a medicated anti-fungus and antibacterial chemical, but in a larger amount, or breathing it too intensely, it produces hallucinations and some kind of a trance, and it certainly helped us to survive another 2 months practically unharmed. There were 5 battles in the same forest all around us in April or end of March in 1945. War makes a lot of noise. We heard, first of all, bombardment, which is like a oh, oh. When a bomb falls from an airplane, it makes one sound, a huge sound. When a cannon shoots, it makes 2 bangs. When it shoots and when it explodes, when the cartridge explodes or the bullet. Then we could start hearing machine guns, which was a ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta from a distance and closer and closer. Then we could distinguish handheld automatic weapons. Russians have those with a drum, which had hundreds of bullets in it. And then came hand grenades, mortars, and handguns. Then the war, first wave came from the right-hand side and moved after a terrible noise all around us, moved to the left and diminished, left. We were waiting naturally because we were not so sure. And to our disappointment and horror, from the left-hand side started again the same noise coming toward us, passing us, and ending up again somewhere where it started. This repeated itself another 3 times until the last wave ended up with total silence, and we were not really sure if it was the last one or if it was some kind of we didn't even know who was winning, who was losing. We were not coming out for, I don't know, days or weeks, because we didn't have any watch and we didn't know even if it was a day or night. And in that hallucinating state, not eating and to be totally disoriented, we started hearing some voices from outside saying, we know you are somewhere here. If you are alive, come out. In Slovak language. And we now so naturally didn't trust them because we believed that it was some kind of a DC trying to kill us, lure us out. And my mother recognized those voices and those people as a peasants. So it was a small, tiny village where we spent those few weeks after with those refugees or war escapees or war refugees. And when she recognized them and they were walking around, back and forth, shouting, "War is over, don't worry, you can come out if you are alive," we started crawling out of that hole. Anyway, we walked like geese, one after the other, and made it through between the minefield and didn't get hurt. And then we washed ourselves a little in that village, and they helped us. They gave us something because we told them that we will reward them later. They gave us some things to wear. Anyway, we eventually came to that town. And it was very unpleasant because when people recognized us, they started touching us, like, how come you still alive? We must be a ghost, and they were scared of us. They just couldn't believe that we made it alive, and it was like so unpleasant that we moved out of the town because it was just impossible to live normal lives. They looked at us some dead ghosts, some people who came out of the grave with illogically some kind of a supernatural phenomena. But my father didn't have a chance to have a job because only few Jews returned, and he wanted to continue in his position as a clergyman, as a cantor rabbi, shochet, which was a kosher food supply, and so on. And my mother was a teacher. Town was very small. Schools were closed, which means that we moved to another town where I then later graduated, and so on. And my brother as well, and my sister as well. And my parents were employed. And life went on. If you ask 100 people, who is God, what is God, you get 100 answers. Everybody would answer it in a way they were able to understand that incredibly intelligent force which rules the universe, set in motion that very sophisticated, complex system. But if people are rather simple, they would believe that God is some kind of a person or some kind of an object. And my education in this field was very different. We were told as little children that God, who created this universe, has no name because any name would pervert the meaning of that incredible creative force which made everything we could see or hear or feel. And simply Jewish religion has no name for God. Substituted with a name of Lord and this and that, but it's only substitution. I didn't know those terms, moral and ethical, but I knew that I should not do to anybody anything I would not expect anybody else to do to me. Which means that, and second thing from Leviticus 19, love your neighbors or love your fellow citizens or fellow humans, same as you love yourself. You don't have to love them more, you don't have to love them less, but you have to love them at least as much as you love yourself. Which means that this were our education about God. We knew what God demanded of us, and we did not have an idea how this world was created. And I am fairly old, and it's still the same puzzle or same unanswered question. We only see consequences of God's creation. We do not see God as a creator because it's beyond our imagination. Hitler very clearly said in Mein Kampf that he would wipe out Jewish people to the last person. And he would also kill all the Slavic people, and he would also kill all the people who were not white, old colored people, and so on. My mother understood it, my father understood it. But how did they approach this problem through God? My father said, if it is God's intention to allow this, let's become martyrs, let's go and die, and God has a purpose, and God has a plan, and it must serve some purpose, and let's not resist, let's do whatever we are told to do, and trusting God that it is a meaning to it. And my mother opposed him. My mother said, hold it, God is not planning to kill us. who is trying to kill us is Hitler and Tito. Tito was a president of Slovak, fascist Slovak Republic. Those two people want to kill us, rob us, kill us. It's not God. God gave us intelligence. God gave us muscles. God gave us mind. God gave us ability to resist, to defend ourselves. We are going to fight those people who try to kill us, and God will help us to do that. And she called her 3 children, and it was 1942, when it was crystal clear what they are planning with us. We just didn't know how. But my mother knew that they are going to kill us. It was no doubt about it. I'm alive because of her awareness. And she said, we have 2 choices. My dear children, 3 children. We can take a poison and die at our choice. This is our decision. Or we can fight against all odds, because around Slovakia, thousands of miles in all directions are German, and SS and Gestapo, and they will trace us, find us and kill us anyway. Should we try against all odds to survive or not? We 3 children looked at each other, and without hesitation we said, no, let's go and fight. Even if they drag us to the railroad stations, force us to walk into the cattle cars, we would refuse it and let's be shot on the spot. And this was a decision, unanimous, no doubts or no hesitations in it. And my brother started immediately thinking of the shelter in the forest, because we lived practically in the forest. The chance to survive at that time was nil, absolutely nil. And we decided, I was 12, my sister 10, my brother 14, no, 12, 14, we decided to fight regardless of common sense, regardless of anything. And the rare opportunity or rare case, we made it alive. It was not easy, but without this determination, it would have never happened. And I can say that my mother was right, and God helped us to survive by giving us the intelligence, the mind, to outsmart and outfit our enemies, who had a very clear objective to just see us dead, so that their particular race would dominate the world and replace all the other people with some tribes which they prefer to rule the world. By the way, everybody is eternal life, because it is in those 99% we don't perceive, it is something in life which is not only biological, and that something is not dying, that something continues in different forms and shapes. And this is what I learned even from that voice, or from that education I was receiving in really conditions of distress or very high tension and very long time of being in silence and darkness. Just to compare it to, if you look at the highest achievements of Sufis or monks or mystics or some esoteric people, some yogis, dervishes, shamans, they had 40 days of deprivation of life or biological functions to achieve a level of understanding. And if they exceeded it, even Moses on the hill, 40 days, it's a 40 days is a probably biologically, a limit to understand things beyond our senses. And I had to go 5 times longer. It was really something bordering miracles or a miracle, or something like beyond ability. It had to be, I had to be conditioned differently, and I would say since my childhood I heard that those suggestions, how to think, how to work, how to behave, where is danger of a biological existence, what is rules, biological rules compared to moral, ethical, justice rules, because they contradict biological life.
Do you think this will ever stop with humanity?
If it doesn't stop, humanity will destroy itself, because simultaneously with power and with time grows technology. Germans fooled the world by having equipment. Siemens built crematoria. Some chemist invented Zyklon B, which was some kind of cyanide in a crystal form, and which exposed cyanide as a gas. And gas chambers were able to be sealed. To seal something is very difficult, and technology allows it. Germans were the most intelligent people in literature, in music, in technology, in manufacturing, in science, and so on. Which means that they used all those advantages to kill people. Which means that you see that the best way to explain it is if that humanity and intelligence and emotional part of the development is not in good agreement with technology, then just few people can destroy the world through technology. I gave a lecture here in Best Western, across the street, to nationwide convention of veterans. They were people who survived Pearl Harbor. He was 2 weeks from being 100 years old, sitting around having a dinner, Anyway, I gave them an hour lecture, and ever since I'm invited to all those actions. And I tell you what happened. I gave that lecture, slideshow lecture, and to my shock, all those generals and all those soldiers and heroes stood up and started applauding and said, "We had weapons, we had tanks, we had airplanes, we had food, we were dressed in uniforms. A big country was behind us. We were protected by all kinds of international this and that. And what did you have? All surrounded by those who wanted to kill us, and you made it. You are the heroes, not us. You are the real hero. You have done something which was totally impossible to survive and to fight, and you did that." I believe, and my experience is, that violence is part of survival. And if you do not protect yourself by using violence, if in defense, of your life or defense of innocent people. You are contributing to a crime committed over those innocent people. Which means that I am not against violence. I am against bad wars and good wars. I am against bad wars, but do not condemn or blame defensive wars as violence. I don't call them violence. I am calling them a response to violence. I have a message, be strong, remain healthy, be good, prefer to be kind rather than to be right, don't compete, cooperate, live in peace, but do not hesitate to fight people who are violent, unjust, and just cruel, and try to dominate over everybody, including you. Do not hesitate to resist. But if you can do it through peaceful means, prefer peaceful means. But if not, do not hesitate to use whatever is necessary to introduce introduce justice, morals, ethics, principles of fairness, equality, and first, before anything else, to retain freedom of mind, freedom of inventions, freedom of creation, be creative, and freedom of life, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Because without that, slave society never ever produced two great civilizations.
My last question, I'm going to make a picture of you now, and when people see your picture, what do you want them to know about you?
A picture just would identify me, telling you things which I didn't invent. I just learned them, I heard them, either as an inner voice or outside voice or education. And my picture is, to me, totally insignificant. But that picture is an image of this second. And this second in billions years of of this universe is simply insignificant. And I don't believe that I am significant. I'm one of many products of the Creator, and if I'm able to speak, it is a consequence of who knows what and how. And all my contribution is that I try to stay alive in a rather turbulent life which I had.